And with tensions growing between David Cameron and Nicolas Sarkozy, the French President is also finding himself at odds with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel over how to deal with the region's finances, and they in turn are having rows with Silvio Berlusconi in Italy. So what's going to happen in the European Union? With me now are Nabila Ramdani, a Paris-born journalist, and Nick Watt, chief political correspondent of The Guardian. Welcome to you both. I have to say, that phrase that Sarkozy used about "you missed a good opportunity to shut up," exactly the same words used by an earlier president, President Chirac, towards Tony Blair.
Well, absolutely, and in many ways Nicolas Sarkozy's words sounded rather childish. It came across a bit like a little boy scolding an older brother about one of his toys, really, but about playing with one of his toys. But the reality is that the euro is, of course, not a toy, and David Cameron has every right to express his government's position on it. There is no reason to believe that David Cameron hates the euro, as Sarkozy put it. He's sceptical about it, and that's why the UK remains out of the Eurozone. But of course, the UK has, you know, a vested interest in having the euro remaining strong.
But of course, having said he wants to play a part, David Cameron's now having to put his money where his mouth is and cancel a foreign trip.
Yes, I mean, there was always a danger about a UK Prime Minister going to a Eurozone summit because, as George Osborne says, you have to pay to play. In other words, this is 450 billion euro EFSF, which we're not part of, and if we went to the summits, we'd have to be part of it. But what David Cameron has obviously done is he said that obviously we won't go to a Eurozone summit, but there should be a European Council. That's all 27 members of the European Union, because obviously we, the United Kingdom, are concerned that there's talk of treaty change in order to have new governance arrangements for the euro, but obviously treaty change will have an impact on us.
But does it puzzle you that we've got this sort of Tory rebellion today in London at a time when actually things would seem to be going in a rather Eurosceptical direction in David Cameron's favour to a certain extent? Yes, and that's precisely why David Cameron could really do without Sarkozy's invective. But I think it has to be put in a context of, it all goes back really to Germany and France's status in the European project. And France still views Britain as somewhat an arrogant outsider who wants its cake and eat it, and this is reflected in the calls for a referendum on the entire project in the UK. So President Sarkozy very much still sees the European project as a Paris-Berlin axis, and he's very sceptical about the role of Britain. Is that a view you think shared by Chancellor Merkel? I think both Sarkozy and Merkel want to give the impression that it is Paris, a French-German matter. They are both the founding fathers of the European project, and they want to be seen as the two who are going to sort out the whole problem. Of course, President Sarkozy has an election coming up next spring, and he wants to be seen as the saviour of the Eurozone crisis. But therefore, what I don't understand, Nick, is surely having, you know, a bit of a argy-bargy with European leaders. I mean, that should be making David Cameron more popular rather than giving him trouble with his own party. Yes, I mean, but the problem for David Cameron is he's never really been totally honest with the Conservative Party, and he's never said to them, when we went into the coalition with the Liberal Democrats, we really did water down our European policy. Or not just slightly water it down, seriously water it down, because obviously there was that manifesto commitment of the Conservatives that they would seek to repatriate social and employment laws, and that had to go, and David Cameron's still talking about it, but he will not get it past the Liberal Democrats. So as long as there is a coalition, that is not going to happen. But you know what? Can I just speak up momentarily for Nicolas Sarkozy? I think he was absolutely wrong to say that there shouldn't be a summit of all European leaders, and David Cameron was absolutely right to ensure that Britain is there. But where I think Nicolas Sarkozy had a point is that British ministers, and I'm thinking really of David Cameron and George Osborne, need to be quite careful about lecturing the Eurozone. In his conference speech, George Osborne talked about how leaders that are now in the Euro rushed headlong into this and they didn't think through the consequences. Well, I can tell you Germany thought through the consequences. The Bundesbank and most of the German elite were very, very concerned about the euro. They knew how dangerous it was to have economic and monetary union without fiscal union, and the reason why they did it was that that was the price they had to pay for German unity. And what about Sarkozy? Is he happy? Obviously, he's facing a difficult election. Is he happy? Is it good for him to be shouting at the British, as it were? I mean, the French press is barely starting to cover it, and in a typical French way, they are reporting what the British press is saying about the whole thing. But if I may just qualify what you've just said, I think it's important to remember, I think David Cameron is right to express his concern about the euro, just as the majority of the Germans now and the majority of the French are ironically becoming Eurosceptics. And these are the two countries which started off the whole thing. So I think, you know, Cameron has a point.
OK, we'll leave it on that point of agreement. Thank you both very much indeed.